Hello, I'm going to talk about The Silent Patient by Alex Megalides, which I think would make a very strong feature adaptation. The Silent Patient is a psychological thriller about Theo Faber, a criminal psychotherapist who becomes obsessed with Alicia Brunson, a famous painter who murders her husband and then refuses to speak after the crime happens. Theo is determined to be the one who unlocks her silence and joins the secure psychiatric facility where she is being held and begins piecing together her past through therapy sessions and Alicia's diary. As the story unfolds, we learn that a masked intruder broke into Alicia's home, tied her and her husband up, and forced her husband to choose which of them would die. In that moment, he chooses Alicia, revealing that when faced with life or death, he values his own survival over protecting her, and that betrayal completely shatters her understanding of their marriage. Alicia ultimately kills her husband because she's devastated by that realization, and the novel later reveals that Theo himself was the intruder, completely reframing the story the viewer thought that they were watching. I would pitch this as a feature because the story is tightly constructed and builds cleanly toward a single powerful reveal. The central question, why did Alicia kill her husband and why has she never spoken since, is immediately compelling and gives the story a clear line of tension from beginning to end. The book reveals information in controlled increments, and that structure works really well for a film because it keeps the audience leaning forward while steadily building toward the final twist. I also think one of the strongest things about the book is its central dynamic. There's something inherently compelling about a therapist trying to get inside the mind of a patient who refuses to speak, especially when the audience eventually realizes he's not a neutral observer at all. That relationship creates a sense of unease that can build really effectively on screen and turns what could have been a straightforward investigation into something much more psychologically engaging. It also gives the story real emotional weight because what truly breaks Alicia is not just the intrusion and the violence of it, but the realization that the person she loved most chose to sacrifice her in order to save himself. Another thing I really like about the material is the fact that the narrator is unreliable. Theo presents himself as the person trying to solve the mystery, but he's actually one of the main reasons the crime happened in the first place. That makes the story feel smarter than a more straightforward thriller because the suspense is not only about Alicia and what she's hiding, but also about Theo and what the story is hiding through him. Once that reveal lands, it changes the audience's understanding of everything that came before it. One thing I do think would be especially important in adapting it is casting Alicia. She's silent for most of the story, so the performance would have to do a huge amount visually. You would need an actress with real presence who can communicate her emotion almost entirely through expression and physicality. If Alicia is cast well, she could become an incredibly memorable character even without much dialogue. However, if that role is cast poorly, I think the movie loses a lot of its power. Generally, though, the dynamic between Theo and Alicia gives the film two great central roles that could attract very strong actors. But I also think the story has more character potential than just Theo and Alicia. Theo's connection to Alicia begins because Alicia's husband is having an affair with Theo's wife. So their partners, Gabriel and Kathy, add another layer of betrayal and psychology that broadens the story beyond the central therapist-patient relationship. The psychiatric facility also gives you doctors, staff, and patients around Alicia, which helps add dimension. And as Theo becomes more personally invested in her case, that adds another layer of tension to the environment. On top of that, the story pulls in people from Alicia's past and personal life, which helps build out her character beyond the mystery itself. So even though Theo and Alicia are the center of the story, the film still has just enough supporting characters and surrounding tensions to feel full. I also think it would work especially well as a movie because it is a very visual piece of material. Alicia is a painter, so even though she is silent, her interior life is still expressed through images and visual details rather than dialogue. There's a strong opportunity to communicate emotion through her artwork, the psychiatric setting, and Theo's observation of her. Beyond the twist and mystery, the material already has a moody, cinematic visual language built into it, which is another reason it could translate well as a feature. Overall, I recommend The Silent Patient as a feature adaptation because it has a highly commercial hook, a compelling central mystery, and a tightly built structure that leads to a strong, powerful reveal at the end. It also has real emotional depth through Alicia's betrayal, a strong central dynamic between Theo and Alicia, and visual elements that make it inherently cinematic. To me, it feels like exactly the kind of IP that can be both psychologically smart, but also broadly audience-friendly.